Chille DeCastro patrols the streets of Las Vegas for police interaction. Someone throws money at Denver Metro Audits, and he wins the GoFundMe take for Friday. Plus, Chille DeCastro versus the LVMPD might actually be going to trial. Then for Saturday, the world is stunned at battery livestreamed on YouTube. Eli ends up in the hospital after being stabbed by EZ Camera 2. We have updates and the latest news. Plus, a look at Saturday's GoFundMe market. Is Floyd Wallace found? Say it isn't so. All this and more on this edition of Auditing Insanity. Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of the Auditing Insanity Newscast brought to you by ReallyCoolNews. I'm Jim Finch and I'll be bringing you 2 days at once as we have news for Friday and Saturday featuring an overabundance of stories on Chille DeCastro and Eli, with some news on Denver Metro Audits and Floyd Wallace tossed in for good measure. With that, let's take things quickly as we ask you to focus on Denver Metro Audits wins Thursday. Christopher Denver Metro Audits Cordova's defend DMA in the fight against corruption and oathbreakers won Thursday with a $100 take from a single donation, ending a 2-month dry spell on the heels of his announcements that he was suing police for an arrest earlier this year. We'll refer back to our original coverage of the case. It was an unusual Friday night live stream for Christopher Denver Metro Audits Cordova, as he was joined by Jim Freedom and Direct D as the men detailed DMA's most recent arrest in Sheridan, Colorado. The arrest apparently happened Thursday night, with DMA claiming that he was stopped after Direct D pointed a flashlight in the general vicinity of a police car that was pulled over on the side of the road. After being pulled over, DMA was taken into custody for obstruction of a police officer and was taken to the Sheridan jail, where he waited well into the next day to see a judge and get bonded out. During the broadcast, the trio boasted that Sheridan fucked up with the arrest as Direct D and not DMA did the alleged crime, and implied a wrongful arrest lawsuit would be filed. Direct D and Freedom Jim revealed that they were in the Colorado area filming a documentary on First Amendment auditors, and that they had filmed in the area with DMA and Regan Benson. Direct D is still wanted on multiple charges in Arizona and claimed to be sitting in Colorado waiting to see if law enforcement would realize he was in the state and attempt to extradite him back to Arizona. Based on the situation and further investigations by Cordova, he is claiming to have a wrongful arrest case against the city of Sheridan and alleged that multiple police officers involved in his handling during the arrest were dirty and had previous involvement in wrongful arrest cases. He complained bitterly that it would be hard to find an attorney who would go against the police, and that he may have to pursue the case as a pro se litigant. He also said he expected to get around $100,000 from the case if he negotiated a settlement, with $30,000 of that going to a possible attorney who would assist him. Cordova did not share a timetable of when he expected to file the lawsuit, but promised more videos intended to damage the reputations of those involved in the arrest in the near future. As for Cordova's win, his fund was the only fund to see any action, as all other campaigns, including our own GoFundMe, went without donations for Thursday. On that note, if you'd like to keep us from getting wrongfully arrested for pettiness and suing the heck out of that damn dollar store, we'd be remiss if we didn't remind you that you can continue to force the dread writer Jim Finch to keep writing this dreadful column each day by contributing to the GoFundMe run by this very channel. All proceeds go to keeping the lights on, eating, and writing new stories to feature here and on ReallyCoolSite.org. Fundraising darling Wallace found? The market returned to normal on Friday, with our own ongoing expenses fund taking the top position again with a $10 donation. However, more importantly, we may have found out what happened with the long-lost king of fundraising, Floyd Wallace. When we last saw Wallace, it was late August and he was having problems with his passport. He had planned on leaving the country almost immediately to return to Colombia to start an extended stay away from the United States, culminating in his planned birthday in Brazil in mid-December. The passport issue started with him noting that the barcode on the back of his passport was damaged. He said it worked enough to get him back into the country, but the whole passport was soaked when he said he was caught in a rainstorm and it became waterlogged. He showed the passport on a live stream and it was covered in black mold spots, and the barcode sticker on the passport itself was clearly damaged, sparking his immediate fundraising efforts for a new passport. The saga drug out as he announced that he had booked a flight and he needed his fans' money to pay for the new passport, as he had already booked the flight to Colombia and had made an appointment at the embassy to get his new passport on an emergency contingent. Of course, the day came and there was a problem with getting a new passport. Wallace claimed that there was some holdup that may have been an unpaid legal fine. He said he missed his ride to return to the embassy, but would update us all on Tuesday of the following week when he would go live. And he never did. In the 3 weeks since he claimed to go live from Colombia with his pay-to-play babes, he simply stopped posting and live streaming on his foreign-only channel. As the only devoted person who seems to give a crap about the creep who is Floyd Wallace, we wondered what happened. We knew he was set to accept a plea deal on October 1st in Oklahoma for outstanding charges of obstruction, but he had addressed those. He had a hearing in August about them, and he would have known if he could leave the country during the period he was waiting for his plea to be heard. He didn't address a restriction, but again, he wasn't addressing anything as he's been radio silent. So we began to check if there were any other outstanding charges against him that might interfere with his leaving the country. There was nothing new in Oklahoma, but expanding the search to Texas, and Wallace had an outstanding charge in Grayson County, Texas, for resisting arrest, search, or transport. He was arraigned in July and agreed to a plea deal on September 10, 2024, where he pled guilty to the charge. He was fined $787 and accepted probation for 6 months. As part of Texas's most common probation conditions, those on probation cannot leave the county that they live in without prior approval, and leaving the country is out of the question without a travel permit. If these conditions were imposed on Wallace, it would mean that his extensive travel plans for the fall and spending his birthday outside of the country would be out of the question. It is also unclear what Wallace would do with his travel channel now as he continues to be radio silent. On that note, if you'd like to keep us from going radio silent, or perhaps you want us to afford to take a break, please leave a note with your donation as to what you want us to do. We'd be remiss if we didn't remind you that you can continue to force Dread writer Jim Finch to keep writing this dreadful column each day by contributing to the GoFundMe fund run by this very channel. All proceeds go to keeping the lights on, eating, and writing new stories to feature here and on ReallyCoolSite.org. DeCastro versus LVMPD going to trial. Judge Andrew P. Gordon issued a 51-page ruling Friday afternoon, partially granting Jose Chille DeCastro's multiple requests to reconsider previous rulings in his lawsuit against the Las Vegas Metro Police Department, while granting the LVMPD partial summary judgment on a number of DeCastro's claims. The lawsuit was filed last year after DeCastro was arrested in March of 2023 for obstructing an officer and interfering with a traffic stop. Essentially, DeCastro approached a car that had been pulled over and attempted to talk to the driver. Officer Brandon Bork of the LVMPD asked him to step away from the vehicle. DeCastro refused multiple times, taking baby steps back at times, and became argumentative with Bork. Bork released the driver from the stop and then detained DeCastro. While DeCastro was in handcuffs, he claimed Bork struck him in the testicles while he was searching him, and another officer squeezed his arm too tightly while restraining him, causing him to suffer permanent nerve damage to his left arm. DeCastro was convicted of the charges earlier this year by a Nevada state court and spent nearly 4 months in jail before having the charges thrown out by a Nevada state appeals court that said the officers lacked probable cause to arrest DeCastro based on his First Amendment right to film police. The federal court had previously ruled that the officers had probable cause to arrest DeCastro and had thrown out the majority of DeCastro's claims, except his excessive force claims against Officers Bork and Sandoval, the officer who squeezed DeCastro's arm, and a charge of essentially improper training. DeCastro, based on his vindication at the hands of the state court, asked the federal court to essentially grant him the case, while the LVMPD, based on previous rulings by the judge and DeCastro's complete lack of stating an actual claim for most of the charges, asked to grant them summary judgment. The judge pretty much split the difference in his ruling. He found that since a jury could go either way on probable cause based on his own interpretation versus the appeals court interpretation, he rescinded his ruling that Bork had probable cause in arresting DeCastro. Gordon also denied summary judgment on federal First Amendment claims against Officers Bork and Torrey. He also denied summary judgment on DeCastro's selective enforcement claims against both officers. In the charges of excessive force, he granted summary judgment to the LVMPD for everything up to DeCastro being placed in handcuffs. That includes the brief scuffle between DeCastro and Bork. He denied summary judgment to Bork for the alleged groin strike to DeCastro while he searched him, and to all officers except for Officer Torrey, who was not on the scene, for Sandoval's squeezing of DeCastro's arm. The judge also found that Officers Bork and Sandoval do not have qualified immunity for the alleged acts of excessive force. Gordon also denied summary judgment on DeCastro's state law seizure and search claims. He granted the LVMPD summary judgment for DeCastro's Fourth Amendment claims. He also granted the LVMP summary judgment on DeCastro's defamation claims, the entity liability claim, the selective enforcement claim based on DeCastro's white lips, and on claims for negligence, civil conspiracy, and abuse of process. Judge Gordon granted the ability to file a new motion for summary judgment on the issues involving the state law, unreasonable arrest and seizure claims, the invasion of privacy claim, and the LVMPD's vicarious liability on state constitution claims. That motion is due by October 4, 2024. He also ordered the defendants to file redacted copies of their video exhibits to remove all personal identifiers by September 27, 2024. Based on his ruling, it looks like the case will be moving closer to trial on the excessive force and probable cause issues. No trial date has been set yet, and we'll update with further information once we receive it. DeCastro searches for police outreach. Chille DeCastro returned to the hard streets of Las Vegas late Thursday night, local time, as he again approached a group of police officers to question them on his personal thoughts on replacing the use of handcuffs with digital detainment. DeCastro approached the officers as they were finishing up a traffic stop, interjecting himself into the conversation and then meekly waiting for permission to ask his questions of the officers before interjecting further. His passive stance, now a trademark as he pretends to lick the boots of law enforcement, DeCastro recently explained that he must be more controlled in his interactions with police as he was prone to arrest. If arrested, a judge would now see that he was a perfect gentleman in his interactions with the police and not to hold his previous bad behavior against him. DeCastro slightly diverted from his planned good behavior as he told the assembled officers that he still thought the majority of police were demons, and even though he encountered one good guard during his recent incarceration, by and large he found that the guards were evil and atrocious individuals. The YouTuber pitched his ideas about digital detainment to the police officers, this time saying that, for example, if they came across a domestic violence incident, the suspect in the case could agree to come along without the use of handcuffs. When asked if the suspect didn't agree to that or use violence against the police, DeCastro stated that they could simply shoot the suspect in the head, as some people deserve to die. The officers, like most of the officers DeCastro approached over the past week, politely excused themselves and drove off without further engagement. DeCastro then spoke directly to his viewers, standing alone on a darkened street corner in Las Vegas, arm fully extended away from his head to give the perspective that he was much taller than he is, and a little less ragged, proclaimed that when he runs for politics, he will change the system from within. He then ended the live stream and returned to lurking in the darkness of Las Vegas in search of further police officers to educate on his new system of rights protectors. Eli attacked by easy cameras in front of home. The growing trend of confronting rival YouTubers at their homes took a turn on Friday night as controversial Yonkers, New York-based YouTuber Eli engaged in a fistfight with YouTuber Easy Cameras On outside of his home and ultimately was multiple times in front of his wife on a live stream. Eli was taking part in the live panel on the People's Podcast TV when he asked the panel for advice. He said that he was at home and that from time to time fans and clout chasers show up for autographs and pictures. Tonight he claimed that there was a fan outside his house who he had previously refused to promote. He said that his wife and son informed him that the man was screaming his son's name and demanded that Eli come out of the house. The People's Podcast TV panel gave various views on the situation with dubious legal advice before Eli said he could see the man, later identified as Easy Cameras 2 by Familia TV, supposedly had brass knuckles. Eli brought up a second feed to the panel as his wife recorded the YouTuber leaving the house and he was immediately jumped by Easy Camera. Easy also had a friend live streaming the altercation. The two men traded punches until Eli took Easy Cameras to the ground and engaged in UFC-style ground and pound. That's when Eli's wife's camera stopped broadcasting. Easy's footage, as aired on Familia TV, showed that Easy took a tremendous beating until he took out a knife and began stabbing Eli repeatedly. Easy got on top of Eli and continued to him until Eli's wife pulled Easy off her husband. Easy's footage ended shortly after that. Eli would later livestream from the hospital, now on a gurney, as he began to show off what appeared to be extensive superficial cuts on his arms, elbows, and shoulders, defensive wounds on his knuckles, and larger stab wounds on his right arm that were covered in bandages. When a nurse asked him to stop recording due to HIPAA rules, Eli told her to take his IVs and monitoring devices off as he was leaving. He said as he was dressing that he lost a lot of blood on the scene and received several staples on his right arm, but refused stitches for the rest of the wounds. He refused to identify Easy Cameras as he didn't want to give his rival YouTuber clout and signed his discharge papers before getting dressed and leaving the hospital. He was greeted by family members and neighbors who he briefly identified before ending his live stream. It is unclear if police were involved in the incident as Easy Cameras live streamed the footage and it was eventually sent to Familia TV. This is a breaking news story. Eli updates details of live-streamed attack. YouTuber Eli released a new video that filled in some of the details surrounding the altercation with YouTuber Easy Cameras On that resulted in Eli's and hospitalization Friday night in Yonkers, New York. In the news footage taken from Easy Camera On's live stream, Easy is in front of Eli's house when the footage begins. He briefly calls out Eli and then is joined by a man Eli identified as YouTuber Yonkers4489. The two discuss what is about to happen as Easy indicates that he is seeking revenge on Eli for calling him out on the day of his daughter's birthday party. Easy Camera holds up his padded glove to the cameras and laughs, claiming that they'll knock out Eli. He briefly exits from the car and enters Eli's apartment building, and came out to say that he'd wait until Eli got home and fully intended to assault Eli. The video then switches to Eli appearing on the People's Podcast TV, describing the situation going on outside. It then again switches to Eli's wife's footage from the fight between Eli and Easy until the camera cuts off midway through the fight. Again, switching camera feeds, Easy's live stream with the camera held by Sirik was now featured, with Eli getting the upper hand until Easy clearly reaches in his pocket. Eli yells that he's got a knife and Eli multiple times with the knife, assuming his own ground and pound position on Eli before being told to stop by Sirik. Sirik and Easy jubilantly celebrated beating Eli as they returned to Sirik's car and fled the scene. The final section of the video featured a neighbor's footage of the aftermath of the police were on scene along with an ambulance as they loaded Eli onto a gurney. The neighbor briefly entered the crime scene to confirm that it was Eli before police asked her to return to her building. Footage shot and shared independently on the Yonkers Voice YouTube channel confirms and the aftermath of the incident. Police were reportedly in search of the gray car belonging to the assailant. Negative interactions between YouTubers resulting in confrontations at the YouTubers' houses gained popularity last October when SSS Sniper Wolf showed up at YouTuber Jack Film's house and doxed his address to her 34 million YouTube followers. She was briefly punished by YouTube with lost monetization. In our own community, YouTubers Irish Demon and Shuggy went to Wales to confront Daniel Jones of the Welsh News Network in May, airing a live stream that exposed Jones' many lies about living in a palatial estate. While Demon and Shuggy have been praised for their expose on Jones, they have received criticism for confronting Jones at his house, and both later discouraged the practice. Their premeditated attack on Eli, despite Eli's controversial stand within the First Amendment auditing community, is the first of note where violence occurred during the doxing. Easy clearly planned the assault and now has removed the footage from his YouTube channel. We will continue to provide updates on this situation as we receive them. And we're back. We're making another quick one tonight as we're overloaded with stories and needed to make cuts tonight for the first time ever. Probably won't be doing that again, but we shall see. On that note, our team has an early game tomorrow, so there'll be a newscast tomorrow night. I may or may not be in a great mood to read the news stories, but that's part of life. We'll have to deal with it when it comes. Good night, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to Really Cool News.